What's up, everybody? Welcome back to your favorite New York Jets subscription podcast. Monday AM coffee from me, your host, Joe Caporoso. Also have a video edition of this on YouTube because we do have our YouTube channel being populated now, so make sure you check that out. Every now and then we'll mix in a couple releases there. Quick PSA off the top. We will have an episode tomorrow on the feed breaking down any of the final roster decisions. Connor and I will have our War Room video answering all your Discord questions Wednesday. We'll have our normal weekly pod Thursday morning. Dan will have Buck the Trend on Friday. And then over the weekend, we will have a 12-pack and likely another film room. Our season preview guide will drop September 7th. Really excited about how that's coming together. All available at patreon.com/Badlands TOJ. Still happy and humbled and recovering from our watch party Saturday night, which was awesome. So one more thank you again to everyone who came out. It was a really nice time. I'm going to use the time this morning to talk about my guess on how the Jets' final 53 will come together. I think one thing that's important to remember is this is going to be very fluid over the next 8-9 days. They will make picks for this 53. People will then still get released. People will get waived. They will pick up people from other teams. There will likely be some trades. So the first cut of the final 53 is never the final cut of what the overall 53 looks like. So I do think they will carry three quarterbacks with Rodgers, Zach Wilson, and Boyle. I think Wilson was fine in the preseason. Pretty good. We're not going to know whether he's a capable backup quarterback until the situation is live in a regular season game, but you have to hope, most importantly, Aaron Rodgers doesn't miss any time this year, but if he does for a couple weeks, Wilson could be the guy that allowed them to beat Buffalo, Miami, and Green Bay last year, even if that's more of that game manager role. I think that's how you'd see it shake out. 5 running backs, Hall, Cook, Carter, Izzy, Bawden. Izzy's one to keep an eye on. Maybe they put him on short-term IR and use a roster spot somewhere else, but it does seem like he'll be ready by week 1. Also seems like they're definitely keeping a fullback in Bawden, which is one of the more interesting developments of the summer. You know, a guy who didn't play at all last year, had a couple okay moments the year before, but clearly fullback is going to be a priority in this offense. So he will be making the team. I don't think Bam Knight is going to stick around. I'm sure the Jets will kick the tires to see if they can get anything for him, but that might be an uphill climb. At receiver, Garrett Wilson, Alan Lazard, Mecole Hardman, Randall Cobb, who I think is going to play a decent amount this year, and then Xavier Gipson as the 5th. I think they try to sneak Brownlee down to the practice squad. I don't think he necessarily popped enough to necessarily make the roster. I think Gipson will be the primary returner, and I would also watch the Jets prospectively looking at the veteran market here. If not before week 1, then before the trade deadline. But I think they'll carry 5 at receiver because they'll carry 4 at tight end. They're not going to risk Kuntz going to the practice squad. They'll take that risk with Brownlee. Ruckert, who I do think will ultimately play a bigger role than Uzama this year, and Conklin, of course, rounding that group out. Offensive line, Dwayne Brown will be your left tackle. Laken Tomlinson will be your left guard. Connor McGovern will be your week 1 starting center. AVT will be your week 1 starting right guard, and Mekhi Becton will be the week 1 starting right tackle. Both Billy Turner and Max Mitchell likely to make it, will make it from a depth perspective. Tippmann, who will have a chance to push McGovern and Tomlinson when he's back and healthy, which hopefully will be soon. And then Wes Schweitzer, who's sort of the veteran Swiss Army knife in being the backup. So carrying 9 there, I don't think there's too many hard decisions at this point. I think Warren Carter will be IR'd and won't be a factor into the roster this year. Defensive line, I think it's the chalk 10 that we've been talking about. I think Smart will unfortunately get pushed off the roster. Quinton, JFM, Quentin Jefferson, Carl Lawson, Al Woods, Huff, McDonald, Jermaine, Clemens. That will be your 10. Now, one thing to watch here is Lawson an IR candidate? I think his injury might be a little more serious than they're letting on. And if that's the case, you look at Izzy, Lawson, those are 2 guys. Could one of them go to IR and maybe they keep Brownlee and have 6 receivers then? Or maybe they just take a different veteran and carry 6 receivers then? That's an interesting one to watch. I could see Lawson missing the first couple of weeks, and because of that, maybe the Jets put him on IR. will only be 4 at linebacker because of how heavy they are in defensive line, with Barnes rounding out that spot behind the 3 starters, although the Jets really are going to be heavy and only playing 2 linebackers at once. I just think Surratt wasn't healthy enough to ultimately get that 5th spot. Safety, Jordan Whitehead, Tony Adams, Adrian Amos. The Jets are never going to cut Ashton Davis, so he will be on the team. I am going to optimistically say that they keep Trey Dean, but he is like right on the bubble, and I could see him making the first cut of the team and then ultimately getting cut at some point, but hopefully he does stick around. We know the specialists will be Zerline, Morstead, Hennessy. Hardy will be, in with the cornerback group, but he is here predominantly for special teams. The rest of your cornerback group, Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed, Michael Carter. They need to hold a slot for Brandon Eccles, who will definitely be on the team as the top backup on the outside. He's suspended for a week. Likely to be Moreland, who holds that spot for a week before getting swapped out. I think Bryce Hall is probably traded for a day 3 pick. He's had enough experience where I think him and Bam Knight are 2 of those guys I'd watch who could be prospectively traded. I think there's definitely a world where the Jets use an IR spot, maybe for Izzy and Lawson in the short term, and maybe that allows them to keep a guy like Brownlee on the roster or go get another veteran receiver, because I think Gibson's definitely going to make it just from a special teams perspective. So that's where I think you see, some of the fluidity come in and can see some movement. But most of this is kind of like set in stone. There's not really going to be a ton of surprises in my mind. I think the Jets are constructed differently than they've been in other years, and it's a veteran win-now team versus a rebuilding team, which takes a little of the drama out of these things. And the heavy amount of waiver wire activity that we've seen in the past probably won't be the case. I think you'll see a lot of other Jet players who get claimed, but I don't know how much claiming the Jets will be doing themselves. I think they'll be keeping an eye on a couple positions, veteran backups at receiver, veteran backups at linebacker, and maybe veteran backup still on the offensive line, but probably not. I think they probably feel internally this is the group they're going to roll with. So IR, Warren, we already mentioned. Popper IR, Bernard Converse. Mildly, again, with how the team was constructed, all the rookies weren't going to make the team. And those 2 guys really haven't played much of it all this summer. So they're more stash for next year. And I think the Jets will be hoping to do the same thing with Brownlee and then not risk it with Kuntz and Gibson, who I think will stick. I suppose there's a chance or a world where they also hang on to Yeboah, but that seems like a little much at tight end overall. Yeboah is a guy I think will get claimed pretty quickly. Maybe the Jets kick around trying to trade him for a day 3 pick, but that could be an uphill climb. But Smart will be another guy who gets claimed quickly. They're not going to move on from Solomon Thomas, who's actually had an okay summer, but he will be on the team as a veteran presence on that defensive line. And I think you're happy with how everything has came together. You'll go into week 1 healthy enough. Injuries you'll watch is Lazard's shoulder okay? Is he 100%? All expectations are he'll be fine. He'll be the second receiver behind Garrett Wilson. And then I think we'll see a good amount of Cobb kind of splitting that quote-unquote wide receiver role with Hardman behind those 2. And then, Gibson sort of rounds out that group as a backup and just as a returner. So if you're a Jet fan, it's a long wait now until week 1. I'm sure by the time kickoff gets here, the Jets will be narrow favorites because the Jets are like a public team this year, and Jet fans will be very active, I think, in betting, pushing the line in their favor. Most recent thing I've seen, I think Buffalo was like a 1.5 point favorite. This game could very well settle on being a pick'em. It's a very close game. It should be a close game. I do like how I don't want to get too much into the Jets-Bills matchup. We have plenty of time for that, but I do like how the Jets match up with Buffalo. And for all the talk of the Jets' offensive line, Buffalo's has some real questions on their offensive line too, and they're going to have to deal with the Jets' defensive line, which has a chance to be one of the best, if not the best unit in the NFL. So this news will trickle in, today, tomorrow, and then you'll have a couple other, roster shuffles likely all the way in through Labor Day weekend, and then we'll have a good feel of exactly what we're going to get week 1 against the Bills, which we've just about made it. We've got to actual real football. Preseason Jets, it was uneventful in a good way. You got just a little bit of Rodgers. You had a great moment from him to Garrett Wilson. Ton of reps for Zach Wilson, ton of tape for Zach Wilson. Did enough to be okay as the backup. Did enough to maybe, if the Jets do ever want to cross the road of potentially trading him, think he put together a decent amount of tape this summer that will be usable for that. And the two other biggest stories, I think, are Mekhi Becton and the process that worked to him getting to be the starting right tackle. The Jets could not get away with starting Billy Turner or Max Mitchell. There's too much talent from Becton, and he got it together these last few weeks and has really earned the job, which is great. That's the highest ceiling the Jets could have at tackle, which would be Becton and Brown out there. And then Jermaine Johnson, looking the part of a guy who's about to make a monster leap. Easy to lose him in the shuffle last year with Sauce and Garrett and Brees. Johnson was another first-round pick. It was quiet as a rookie. He looks the part of a guy who could have 7, 8, 9 sacks this year, especially if Lawson is going to miss time early in the season. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Check out the Patreon for more episodes every single day this week. www.patreon.com/BadlandsTOJ. And we will talk to you soon.